Excellent. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us. We are very excited about this segment with one of our strategic partners. KPMG is on. So if you'll switch to the next slide, here's what we're going to go through in about 45 minutes. So before we get to the agenda, I want to introduce everybody and let you know who is on the call. So my name is Alan Thornton. I am the founder and CEO of GrantSource. Mark is on my team, and he's going to help us with all of the chat and the questions. So if you have any questions throughout the duration of the webcast, please put that in. Everybody say hi, Mark.
Hi,
Excellent.
Mark.
Okay, we can.
Hey,
Good
Mark.
afternoon. Good afternoon.
Introduce yourself, Mark.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mark Hamzat. I'm a board member with GrantSource, and we're happy to be able to share this important, pertinent information with the nation. Thank you.
Excellent. So if you right under the orange arrow in that box, you can see a orange with 3 dots. It's a chat function. Any questions, go into that. We also have Zion from KPMG, and he's going to go over a lot of the misconceptions and the things that we need to know about the PPP, the EIDL, the CARES Act. I know there was some revisions. So everybody say hi, Z, and Z, if you can introduce yourself.
Hey, Z.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Mark, for giving us the opportunity to present today. We're very excited to share some knowledge and some experience that we've had with some of the CARES Act provisions. I go by Z, and I'm a tax manager at KPMG, and just been with the firm for about 9 years, and really excited to be here today.
Excellent, excellent, and thank you for being here as well. And last, we're going to round it off with, as you know, there was another round of the CARES Act that just came out. Some say 500 billion. It's really about 380 billion that's allocated for small businesses and nonprofits. So Tim is going to go after the disaster relief payments and then the introduction on KPMG Spark. So everybody say hi, Tim, and Tim, introduce yourself.
Good day, everybody. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Alan, so much for reaching out to us. We're very excited about working with GrantSource to help all of your customers and clients and contacts. I've been with KPMG a very long time, so long that they might take the first letter of my last name and add it to KPMG and make it KPMGS for Styles. I have been, that's a joke. Don't file any complaint. I have been, as I said, with KPMG a really long time. Prior to this, I think we have a number of not-for-profits on this call. I ran our not-for-profit practice in the US and globally, and I joined the internal KPMG Spark team about 6 months ago as its COO. So thank you very much, and I'm very excited to be here.
Phenomenal. And then for those of you that stayed with us till the end, there's an incentive to do that. The great folks at KPMG have done us a great service and put together a guide that has screenshots and the exact place that you need to go to apply for these protection programs, the disaster loans. And then we put in a guide that has over 1,000 different grants that you'll be able to go through to make sure you can get and capture some of this funding. So without further ado, I'm only going to spend a couple minutes just talking about who we are and what we do, and then we'll round it off, and I'm going to pass it to Z to get into the meat of the presentation. So for those of you that don't know us, what GrantSource does in a nutshell, there are these macro events that happen, right? And they always happen, whether it be forest fires. I actually reside in our offices, corporate offices are in Houston, Texas. You remember Hurricane Harvey, that happened, and there were a lot of funds released for that. And then what we're dealing right now with the COVID and the coronavirus pandemic. In addition to that, there was some laws passed, and we know there was 2.2 trillion that went out and got allocated. There was another 500 billion that got allocated. But the problem is, that sounds like a ton of money, but what does that mean for us, and how do we capture it for either our small business and nonprofit? So what we're able to do is, and just a little bit about me, not to impress you, but more to impress upon you, we started this organization because we didn't know what we didn't know, and we ended up getting burned, right? My background is in enterprise software. but my passion is really around nonprofit management and helping people. So we started this because we didn't know what we didn't know, and diving in and getting educated, we ended up writing a bunch of books, starting webinars, doing guides and trainings all over the country with great partners like KPMG to make this happen. So let me show you about how we got started. We started, next slide. I started with a community service organization, and my background was in enterprise software, but we had that organization called Men of Honor, and there were two really key things, and that's why I'm so passionate about compliance as well, because we almost lost our nonprofit due to compliance. There's a lot of filings and there's bookkeeping that needs to happen, and if you don't keep that up, you can actually lose your organization. So that's why we're excited to partner together. And when it comes to grants, there's really three reasons why people fail when it comes to securing grants, and this results in missed funding opportunities. Number one is time, right? You don't have the time, you're wearing multiple hats, you're doing a lot of things, and that's a lot of times why you're not doing your books, right? You're trying to focus on your business. Number two is tools. You don't have the necessary tools available, whether it be software and databases, to make sure that you can aggregate the actual grants that you need to qualify for or the incentives. And the last is the talent. And there's a few grants out there that we're going to give you a guide today that are one-pagers that you can fill out yourself. But when it comes to those more comprehensive proposals, a lot of people don't have an organization, whether nonprofits or impactful businesses, in-house to make that happen. So what we do is we are able to, next slide. We have created a digital platform to streamline that whole process, and it's called DAPS. GrantSource is the platform, but our DAPS system within GrantSource stands for databases, analytics, alignment, personnel, and it's a system all licensed as a service. So it's full service, and we have partners within there like KPMG, right? So we can do everything and make sure that you can focus on your business. We will find, write, track, and manage that grants and do the bookkeeping and the filings and the compliance on the back end. And the good thing is you don't have to risk losing your money. So it's 100% risk-free. The reason why is we have investment protection. If we don't at least get your investment back within the first 12 months, we will continue to write at no cost or give you a credit for the difference. And our revenue model is simple. It's a subscription model, so it's predictable, it's sustainable. It's not a, hey, it depends model. We help you raise anywhere from $50,000 all the way up to $1 million, and the investment is only $500 to up to $5,000 a month. So it's about a 10 to 15x ROI to you without having to risk money. So I'll wrap it up. That's just a little bit about us, what we do and how we do it. There's other competitors out there, but there's none that has everything that we do in the depth and the breadth of what we do. We're a one-stop shop. We're not just a database. We're not just a grant writing firm. We have everything in one place. We have over 850 customers. We've helped them get just under $10 million in grants, and we have success rates in SBIR, foundation, corporation, and marketing grants. And here's a few of the customers that we've done business with. So with that, that's what we do. That's how we do it. Zia, I'm gonna turn it to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. This has been very interesting, very helpful, and insightful. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about a few of the major provisions of the recently passed CARES Act, and in particular the Paycheck Protection Program. So this is one of the programs that here at Spark we've dealt with extensively over the past few weeks, and we've helped our clients obtain those loans. So as many of the people on this webcast know, this Paycheck Protection Program initially was passed on March 27th, and Congress allocated $350 billion of funds to smaller businesses, and those funds got absorbed and used up very quickly. So Congress passed a second round. So for those of the people on the webcast who haven't applied yet to those for those loans, I would encourage them to do that as soon as possible, since the funds are going to be allocated on a first come, first served basis. Now, one thing about the program is that it is an SBA program, a small business administration program, but it is administered by the local bank. So what we've seen from our customers is they take the first step of approaching the bank. However, some of those banks are backlogged or don't process those applications as quickly as possible. So what we've done is encourage our clients to also reach out to fintechs, to fintech companies like PayPal or Bluevine or Square or Cabbage. There are like a ton of those companies out there that can also help out with those PPP loans. Obviously, businesses can obtain only one loan, but that doesn't prevent them from applying to different places and seeing which place would reach out to them the quickest. So by applying to those different fintechs is the equivalent to queuing up to be considered for the loan. So I actually had a client just this week who told me that he applied with PayPal and he received the funds within like 4 days of application, which was really fantastic. So if you're waiting on your local bank, I would strongly encourage you to go and like check out like those fintech as well. Now, I don't want to spend much time talking about I guess the qualifications for the PPP loan, since I would assume most of the people on the webcast are already aware of the major provisions. But I do want to touch on what type of expenses you can spend the money on if you've already received the funds, and what would qualify you for the forgiveness portion of the loan. So as most of the people already know, like the major provision of this loan could be forgiven if the proceeds are used for the qualified expenses, which are payroll, rent, utilities, mortgage interest. And one of the things is to keep in mind is that no more than 25% of the loan could be used on non-payroll expenses. In other words, payroll has to constitute at least 75% of how you utilize the funds. Now, there is a little bit of confusion, like what is payroll, what is not. Payroll is basically your W-2 wages, your net earnings from self-employment. But there are two very important points to consider when you calculate your payroll cost, is that first you have to maintain your employee headcount. So the major purpose of this provision is to protect the employees and to ensure that the employers maintain that employee headcount. And the way to do that is to calculate your full-time employee equivalent. So once you receive the money from that loan origination date, you have to keep track for the next 8 weeks what your full-time employee equivalent is. In other words, how many full-time employees you have. And just to clarify, a full-time employee equivalent basically is calculated by taking the number of hours an employee works for you and divided by 40. So if you have a part-time employee working 20 hours, that's half full-time employee equivalent. Now you have to calculate your full-time employee equivalent and then compare it to what your full-time employee equivalent was either for the first 2 months of 2020 or for the period of February 15th to June 30th of 2019. Now, if your employee headcount decreased, that would potentially result in partial loan, like basically the loan not being forgiven. So it's very important that you maintain your employee headcount. The other point I wanted to make is that you have to maintain your level of salary. So your salary cannot decrease more than 25%. So that is very important. So that the major provision of the PPP program is to maintain the number of employees and maintain the salary level. So so if you have any questions, I would be happy to discuss them like in the chat or like offline. My contact information should be included at the end of the slides. But this is at a very high level. I just wanted to make those points. And just like one more point to make, the IRS actually came up with a notice on April 30th, which was very controversial. This was notice 2020-32, and basically what the IRS said is that any deductions or any expenses that are paid for with loan amounts that are forgiven are not going to be deductible for tax purposes. Now, there has been a huge backlash from Congress and from the AICPA because that is not how Congress intended the legislation to be written. They intended that loan to be a tax-free money to the taxpayer that is used for those expenses. And now Treasury is coming and saying, if you're paying your expenses with that tax-free money, you cannot take the deduction, which is going against like the intent of Congress. So we expect that there would be like some communication coming out in the next few weeks. So there's going to be potentially some development on this front. But at this point, the IRS is taking the position that those expenses would be not deductible. Now, the other program I wanted to touch on is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This was a very popular program to apply for smaller businesses. However, we actually talked to an SBA official last week, and he said that any loan applications made after April 30th would not be like looked at. So in other words, like the EIDL program is at capacity, so they're not taking in any more applications. So if you did apply before April 30th, chances are your application would be looked at, but no applications after April 30th would be taken in. So I don't think there would be need. There would be a need to go into like too much detail here, since if you haven't applied at this point, it's too late, unfortunately. However, there are some other provisions in the CARES Act that could potentially benefit employers. So one of them is the, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the payroll tax deferral. So the payroll tax deferral, what it means is that employers are going to be eligible to defer the employer portion of qualified wages paid between March 27th and December 31st. So to put that in other words, any employer portion of the payroll taxes could be deferred until 2021 and 2022. So 50% should be paid by December 31st, 2021, and the remaining 50% will be paid by December 31st, 2022. So this is an important provision. So one caveat that I want to mention is that this payroll deferral program is not available to employers that have taken advantage of the PPP loan forgiveness. In other words, if you have received PPP funds, you are not eligible for the payroll tax deferral. However, if you have not gotten a chance to take advantage of the PPP program, this payroll tax deferral is available to you and will potentially help you with like those employer portion of the payroll taxes. So those could be deferred again, 50% till the end of 2021 and 50% to the end of 2022. Now, the other provision of the CARES Act is the employer retention credit. Now, this is again for the same caveat as the payroll tax deferral. If the employer has taken advantage of the PPP loan program, they will unfortunately not be eligible for the employer retention credit. And what this retention credit does is, if your business has been shut down, like partially or fully as a result of the crisis, or if you have experienced a decrease in revenue of over 50%, you're eligible to take the retention credit, which the credit is 50% of qualified wages up to $10,000. So this credit is up to like $5,000 per employee. Now, this credit, like the way to take it is, this credit would first be applied against your Social Security tax of those wages, and then any credit above that Social Security tax would be available for a refund. So that could be a potential immediate cash infusion and help with the liquidity of the business. But again, very important, like if you've taken advantage of the PPP program, you are not eligible for the employee retention credit, unfortunately. So the paid leave provisions, those were not part of the CARES Act, but they were part of the Family First Act before that. And what they say is that if a business had an employee that had to take some time off due to either illness or either to take care of a family member who was ill or who was not working due to the pandemic, employers had to provide paid sick leave, and that sick leave is limited to 10 days or up to 80 hours. And the full pay, if is capped at $511 a day, up to $5,100. So unlike the other provisions I just spoke about the payroll deferral and the retention credit, this paid leave provision actually is it's not advantageous to businesses since they're like required to still maintain the payroll to their employees, even though the employee is on sick leave or paid family leave. Now, the good news here is that there is potentially a credit that employers can take to offset some of that hit to their financials, and that credit would be to the extent of payroll taxes. So to the extent that you pay payroll to employees who have taken paid sick leave or paid family leave, you are eligible for a credit up to your employer portion of the payroll tax. Now, there is more guidance to come on how to claim that credit. So I don't think we're going to have enough time to cover all the details, but I'm more than happy to address any questions either in the chat or after this webcast. Now, this is just the triggers real quick. And as I said, the employee, if an employee is unable to work due to these 6 triggers, he is qualified for paid sick leave, and on the right-hand side is the qualification for the employee to qualify for paid family leave. So with that, I want to pass it to Tim, who will touch briefly on the qualified disaster relief payments under IRC 139. And again, I apologize, I had to breeze through those slides pretty quickly. I know we have a lot of materials to cover, so I just wanted to make sure we leave enough time at the back end to cover any questions that the participants might have. And obviously, I'm available after the webcast as well. So Tim.
So real quick, Tim, before, if anybody has any questions, please put it in the chat. We want to keep this interactive and we want to keep you guys awake all the way through the webcast. So if there's any questions, definitely just put them in the chat and Mark will get to them as we go.
Yeah, and Alan, just for Alan and Mark and Z, I just got a message in. We're having an issue, a technical issue with the chat function. I'm not sure what it is. However,
really?
people can ask questions. So again, underneath that orange icon in the upper part of your screen, you'll see a hand. You can click on that and you can type your question in there. I believe the other panelists can see those questions. And so we will look at those questions and address them as before we finish the broadcast here. So if you have questions, it appears we're having a chat issue. So please put your questions by clicking that hand icon and writing the questions in there, and we'll get back to those questions before the end. Very quickly, I just wanted to emphasize one thing, which is if you as an organization have not yet applied for the PPP program, just to underscore what Z has just said, there are these other benefits that are out there and available to your organization, whether it's through the payroll deferral or it's for the payroll, the tax credit. These are important elements, and you probably need to do a cost benefit, and obviously we've got folks that can help you do that. So if you haven't yet applied for that PPP program, you might want to just give some thought as to what are the other provisions, and is there a greater economic or financial benefit to your organization by taking advantage of some of these other elements that exist both in the CARES Act and from some of the other legislation that has been passed. Now, I just want to touch very briefly on something called qualified disaster relief payments. This is, again, another provision that very few people are aware of, but Congress years ago enacted a section in the tax code which allows people to take a deduction when they have suffered a qualified disaster. There are some general requirements which are listed on the screen here. They must be reasonable and necessary. They cannot be wage or income, and they can't be reimbursed by insurance. So some of the examples that you may have incurred may be deductible against your income. And there are a whole slew of other provisions around net operating losses and carrying them back. Those rules have been liberalized, carrying those losses forward to offset future income. But if your business has suffered a loss because of COVID-19, some of those expenses may actually be deductible against your current income. And if it generates an NOL, as I said, you may be able to carry it back and recover taxes paid in prior years, as well as carry it forward. So there are some examples here on the screen. For example, travel expenses incurred to prevent the spread of C-19, medical expenses not covered by insurance, childcare and educational expenses. If you have a home office deduction, for example, there may be expenses related to that have gone up due to C-19, for example. Many of the folks that we've talked to, their telecommunications charges have gone way up. These are all potential additional costs, and there are others as well that you may be able to deduct against your taxes. So I just wanted to emphasize that, because these are provisions that not a lot of people are aware of. Finally, there are a number of other opportunities as well that are buried out there in all of the legislation. And as Z said, this information changes literally daily. So it's been a real juggling challenge for us to keep everything updated. But I wanted to give you a couple of examples. They're here on the screen. So for example, if you have students and they've incurred loans, there's student loan assistance that's available under these things. There are adjustments and benefits if you need to, for example, perhaps borrowing or taking a distribution from some sort of retirement or benefit plan. These are all things that might be able to help you manage your cash flow for your organization during this time.
Tim or Alan,
Yeah.
where do you think the best place is for people to find the most updated information?
That's a great question. So at the end, we're going to give people a guide to give them not only where the information is, but how to navigate all the way through it. And KPMG has done a great job of actually putting screenshots on exactly where to go, not just saying, hey, go to this website. So
fantastic. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, and also, Mark, in partial response to that question, there are a number of state and local programs as well. So it's not just this federal legislation. And in the guide, the resource guide that Alan mentioned that you'll be able to get, there are a number of pages in there that go through the various types of state and local programs that are also available. So for example, in California, you've got state provisions. You also have City of San Francisco and City of Los Angeles provisions that have been enacted. So it's important to know what are all of the possible options. What's the variety that's out there for you? So I wanted to take it yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Another quick question. So
yeah.
Obviously, we're going to send them some information, and there's some state and local, just to kind of quickly recap. And then Z also mentioned that, PayPal, Square, are there any other ones quickly, Z, just so that we can, because we're giving a lot of information here, we don't want it to get lost.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the ones that I'm mostly aware of are PayPal, Square, Cabbage, Blue Vine. So we've mainly worked with like those four, or we've heard that our clients mostly work with those four platforms, but there is a slew of other fintech companies out there who also deal with the PPP, but I believe those four are the major ones.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Z. Go ahead, Tim.
Great, thank you. Good questions. Thank you, Mark, for keeping us focused and on the important things. I just wanted to very quickly, we wanted to share with you a bit about what Spark is doing. One of the questions that Mark just asked was, you know, where do we keep, or where can we find current information? The resource guide will be excellent. I also, if you're interested, you can open up, you know, your web browser. If you type in KPMG Spark, our landing page will come up. At the top, you'll see a button. It's kind of an orange colored button. It says COVID-19 resources. And if you click on that, we've provided a whole bunch of information and FAQs and other things that are there that can help guide you through and keep you current. One thing that is important too is that as states and local governments begin to lift the restrictions and go back to work, a lot of people have questions about, well, what do I do for going back to work? What does that mean? What about bringing my employees on and so on? We'll be soon posting a link to that resource page as well. And we'll also share this with Alan and Mark so that they can add it to their available information, a very comprehensive guide that was put out by Madrona Venture Group. It's excellent on all the questions that you need to ask about how to go back to business, because that's weighing on a lot of people. We did want to talk very, very briefly in the few minutes remaining, and then we'll get back to the questions about why KPMG Spark and why GrantSource have partnered. Over the past roughly 5 weeks, we have helped KPMG Spark clients get more than $3.5 million in financial assistance due to this pandemic. And what was interesting for us is when we were talking to the banks and so on, a lot of the banks treat loan applications in one of three ways. One, they approve the application, it goes through. Two, they put the application on hold because information is missing. For example, Z was talking about the average payroll cost that you have. Some organizations have a hard time calculating that, they don't know. The third category we've noticed with banks is just an outright rejection of their application. And so what we've been doing is helping these organizations with those last two situations where their application's been put on hold or it's been rejected for not having the correct information. And the real point that we wanted to raise here is that KPMG Spark has a platform where, as you'll see in a minute, your information comes in, we have the financial information that you've shared with us, and we can help you put together some documents so that you can make these loan applications, so that you can do a cost benefit analysis of, do I take the PPP loan, or perhaps do I just do the deferral, and so on. I wanted to give you a little bit of history, and we're trying to keep this a little bit light and upbeat. And so, as I said, I've been with KPMG a long time. We've been around for about over 120 years. And honestly, for the last 105 or 10 years, bookkeeping and accounting has been kind of done the same way. What you do is you gather documents, you try and figure it out, you typically give it to somebody, and then you wait while they process it and they get back to you. And many, many people, I'm guessing many of them on this call, also try and keep things themselves, usually in some sort of manual fashion, either literally with receipts that they put in a box or a bag, pen and paper. A lot of people use Excel spreadsheets, and some folks use do-it-yourself software. And what we found out several years ago was that even though people were trying to do this process of accounting and bookkeeping themselves, they had all sorts of questions that they were trying to ask. And so Spark was created to help remove the pain of do-it-yourself accounting and bookkeeping, and also tax preparation work, if that's something that organizations need or want. So Spark's been around since about 2013. In 2018, literally 24 months ago, KPMG purchased Spark and added it to its platform to really, really focus on small to medium-sized businesses and not-for-profits. And what we found was that a lot of these organizations are not served well by the technical platforms that are out there. Many of the software technologies that are available, you either download it yourself or you create an account, but you're still left doing all the work of making sure that things are categorized properly, they're in the right accounts, and doing all of the monthly reconciliations and so forth. In a nutshell, KPMG Spark does that all for you in real time. So the way it works very simply is you go in, you connect your banks and credit card accounts, invoicing and other things to the platform. It's a secure connection. It's a read only. We don't have access to your accounts or the information therein. It's just a platform that pushes that data in real time into the Spark platform, where we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to automatically categorize all of those transactions and get them where they need to be in your financial statements, whether it's on the balance sheet or the profit and loss statement or wherever it sits in the trial balance. And what's really neat about the platform is, as I mentioned, it's done in real time. So you can log in at any time, either through your laptop or through your phone, and you can see where you are literally month to date, year to date, week to date on your revenue, your expenses, and all of the other types of things that you might be interested in. Very quickly. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Quick question. How can, you mentioned, KPMG Spark can help you, but, with regard to bankers, is it a good idea to, actually try to get in touch with your local banker and, work with them to help you work through some of these things? Because I know myself, email, things get lost, et cetera, and so do you recommend that? And have you seen some of your clients doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of our clients actually do start with their bank because of these programs, and particularly the media coverage on the PPP program. And as Alan said at the top of the broadcast, of the $350 or $60 billion that was re-upped by Congress on April 24th, 310 billion of that is for the PPP program. You must apply through a bank. So you're absolutely right. You have to go through a financial institution to do that. The financial institution will have some of your information. My guess is most businesses work with more than one bank generally, or they may have a variety of credit cards, or they may handle their payroll separately outside of the bank and so on. And so it's sometimes difficult for the bank to be able to give them all or pull together all the information that they may need in order to consider these programs. And so that's why we mentioned the fact that within the Spark system, it pulls in all of your financial information, even if you've got 5 banks and 15 credit cards or whatever it might be. Does that help answer that question?
It does. And then I guess, would an actual phone call to your banker to, help you with some of this information, would that help? I'm not sure if people are doing that and then actually building a relationship with their banker as well.
Yeah, it's a very important point. And like I said, we're not trying to remove the bank. We can't. And I think that you raise a really, really good point. That Mark, I mean, everyone should be building those relationships with their banks, making sure that they've got access to those kind of financial institutions for resources and information, because many of the banks have a lot of great information in there. So it's a really, really good point. And we would encourage people to build those relationships. Very, very quickly, just an overview of how Spark works. It's very smooth. We have onboarding people that help you. You create an ID. As I mentioned, you link your accounts so that they're read only and the data flows in real time. I mentioned that we use machine learning to categorize those expenses. And then I just want to pause here on point number 5. Most of the other platforms out there are what we call DIY or do-it-yourself platforms. And the problem with those platforms is, as I said, you as the person running the business or the business owner or the executive director of the organization, you're left trying to figure out what to do with all this information. We have, for every single client, a dedicated account team, which includes a bookkeeper, an account manager, and then also a CPA. And so one of the big differentiators for Spark, in our view, is that we provide a dedicated team that knows your business and has resources available to answer your technical questions and other information. So it's a really powerful tool at a very low cost, which we'll touch on in a minute. As I mentioned, auto reconciliations are done automatically and your financials are available at any time. Mark, to the point you raised about the banks, again, many times people want, the banks want a financial statement that's very current, even through the last month. In traditional methods, they would have to go back out to their accountant, they'd have to get things updated, and then they'd have to probably get financial information, which may only go through the end of 19, because that's the last financial year. With Spark,
Yep.
they can pull off a financial statement through today. So that it really helps people to focus on their business. There's a dashboard feature. I won't spend much time on that, but every time you log in, it pops up and you can take a look at it, get your information. And what's really important is the huge variety of things that are available to you in the platform. For folks that at the end here, when we're going to show you this link in just a minute where you can log on, you'll be able to get the COVID-19 resource document. And within that, it also provides information around what are the various elements of the platform to help you better manage your organization. So finally, I think I want to turn it, because we're getting a little tight on time.
Real
Yes,
quick,
go ahead.
back real quick, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want to highlight some of this. Go back one more, because when we
Sure.
talk about, and even grants and securing some of these whatever funding that you're going to go after, they're going to ask for financial statements. Whether when it comes to grants, we get to the portion we may write a phenomenal proposal, and then we say, well, it's time to submit it. We need your 990s, and sometimes I get the deer in the headlights look. Oh, let's go get that, right? So this platform will do everything for you, right? Highlight of one thing that Tim said: you get a bookkeeper, you get an account manager, and you get a CPA, all in one platform, and you have a dedicated account specialist. I mean, it's phenomenal what you guys are doing, right? So that's why we wanted to partner. Just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And excuse me, just to be clear, I put this slide in. We don't really have a lot of time, but you want to know that things are complete, that if the IRS comes back, there's a paper trail that can be audited. And KPMG, of course, is a very well-known brand, as people know, in the accounting and in the capital markets around reliability and quality. And we just want to underscore that. We take it for granted, but it's an important part of when you think about who's handling your financial information. So Alan, if I may lean on you, just to talk about what people get through what we're doing with this incredible partnership with GrantSource, and then we'll go through these questions and try and answer as many of them as we can. And so Alan, why don't I turn it over to you, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's some of you may not have any questions. You're like, hey, how much, what's the investment? I'm ready to go. I needed this yesterday. Some of you may have a few questions, so we'll stay on to answer those. But for those of you that are ready to get all your compliance together and go after some of this money, we're giving you an offer you can't refuse, right? So we're not only going to help you do your 990s, we're going to help you secure some of this money. We run a revenue accelerator, and it's one of the top in the country. And we're going to give you a 3-month membership, and you have weekly support calls to find all the money that's out there, along with a whole bunch of our other clients. Also, if you've never even heard of grants before and you're starting at the foundation, we have a 2-day class that we do. We're actually going to do it in 17 cities around the US, Canada, and Mexico. COVID put a little damper on that temporarily, but that is available online. You're going to get access to that. And then you're going to get the entire KPMG Spark platform to do everything for you. Now, of course, that is the beginning package. If you have, 100 accounts and all kinds of different transactions, there's a tiered structure. But for those of you that just have, 1 to 4 accounts and you have about 30 transactions in it each, no more than that, we're going to do this package. It's over a $3,000 value. We're going to do it for about $200 a month. I mean, it's incredible, right? We know people are hurting right now, so we're trying to help do what we can. So for those of you, Z, if you could put that link, I saw you just did, you can click on that link and you can go get, even for those of you that aren't interested in this one time in a lifetime deal, you can actually get the guide, right? So everybody on there, at least click on the link. You can get the guide. That's free of charge, whether you do business with us or not. And then those of you that want to enroll, we're going to do this for 20 people to get this offer. So with that, if there's any questions, we'll take those and go through everything else. Thank you guys so much. What we're doing for people here is absolutely incredible.
So we've got a number of questions, and the links are there in the chat. I think you can see them there. Let me quickly go to the questions. There are a lot of them, and
Okay.
so we'll go through with the remaining time as many as we can, and I'll try and direct these to the right person. Can you see those questions, Mark? I wasn't sure if you...
I cannot actually see the
I
question.
cannot see them either.
I can't see
Okay,
them
well, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and shepherd this. So I think the first one, Z, is directed to you. It says, when paying employees with PPP funds, how does overtime come into play? And they mentioned that they've got a number of employees who worked overtime during the last month, or sorry, during the last year.
So the overtime, I mean, the overtime is like just regular payroll, as long as they're like W-2 employees. One point is that contractor pay, so if they're a contractor, that doesn't qualify for the payroll, I guess like as payroll. If you're paying them overtime, that would qualify for the forgiveness. However, the forgivable portion would be up to the loan amount. So even if you pay them more than usual, you cannot have more than whatever your original loan amount forgiven. So
Yep.
you can pay them more. It's just like if it exceeds the original portion, if it exceeds the original PPP loan, it's going to come out of the business.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the next question. Just as a reminder, before people drop off, we'll also be emailing all the people who registered. Because we've got your email. Thank you for doing that. And we'll send you the link through the email registration that you provided, so that if you are having trouble clicking on the link here, we'll make sure we get it to you right after this broadcast is over. The next question, Z, is does workers' compensation insurance and liability insurance, which is required by law, is that considered payroll?
So the workers' compensation, it is not one of the items of payroll. So payroll would only include the W-2 wages. It would include the group health insurance and any retirement benefits.
Okay, great. There was a question here specifically for the nonprofits. Are there any programs to assist nonprofits that are not related to payroll? Alan or Mark, do you have a response to that? I have an initial quick thought, which is, yes, there are.
Yes.
You got to check the local programs and other things as well. Also, you should know that for the unrelated business, sorry, not for unrelated business income, but for individuals, they can take up to $300 deduction above the line for contributions to organizations. That's important. So even if they don't itemize, they can still do that. Alan, do you know of other programs to assist nonprofits?
Absolutely. So on that guide, if you go to that link, like I said, whether you do business with us or not, and you put your information in, it'll email you a link, and there are over 1,000 different grants and financial resources, most of those being resources for nonprofits for coronavirus outreach or for help within your organization. So it's on the guide.
Great. The next question is, will these slides and recording be available? Yes, afterwards, and that resource guide has most of those slides in it. In fact, there's a lot more in there as well.
And real quick, Tim, if you're having trouble, Z, can you repost that link? Because I think people were having trouble with the little hashtags at the end. So if you paste that one down.
You know what? I actually I can send it to organizers and panelists only.
Tim,
I don't think I can send it to like everybody else.
I did. I reposted it to everybody on all the chat.
Okay.
I did put it in there. And like I said, we'll email you right after this and get it to you so that you can sign up right literally the moment we hang up here. Here's another one, Z. I don't know if you know the answer to this one. I don't. It says, I own a gym, and except for me, all my trainers are 1099 workers. Does the PPP loan forgiveness program include keeping and paying my 1099 workers, my independent contractors?
Contractors are not considered employees for the PPP loan. So in this case, when you apply for the PPP loan, if you're, for example, depending on what your gym structure is, whether it's an S corporation or a partnership or a single member LLC, there will be different requirements when you apply for the PPP loan. Short answer is independent contractors are not considered employees, and any amounts that you pay to them is not going to be considered payroll for determining the PPP loan amounts. However, let's say you're a single member LLC, the way you would determine your PPP loan amount is you would take your 2019 Schedule C income, which is basically your self-employment income or the profit from the business, and that will be your personal payroll, kind of payroll. Like your profit from the business is going to be your personal payroll, and that's what you're going to use to determine your PPP loan amount. But independent contractors are not employees of the business, and they will not be considered in the payroll.
Great. Alan, this next one's for you. It said, can you please review again the offer for $200?
Like, what? Are you serious? Yeah.
That's what it says. I'm reading it.
I know people had to do a fact check on that. So we're gonna do your 990. We are going to also give you 3 months of our grant source revenue accelerator, and that's gonna have templates, guides, and resources along with a group weekly call for you to go after some of this money. You will also get our 2-day Money for Your Mission grant seminar. So that is the foundations of grants, where to find grants, what you should look for with grants, all the different levels. It's about 40 hours of content, right? So it's over the course of a couple of days, but it is on demand. It's online. We usually do those, like I said, in 17 different cities. And once this gets lifted, we'll be able to do that again. And then real time, you'll have access right away. So for those of you that are using QuickBooks, if you're using any type of do-it-yourself bookkeeping, we'll be able to port that in directly to the KPMG Spark platform and get your books in the right fashion today, right? And then we'll also do your year-end tax filing. And if you just have and keep me honest here, Tim, it's 1 to 4 accounts with no more than 30 transactions each. We're going to do all that for $200 a month. I mean,
That's
just
basic.
our portion alone, yeah, is we charge $500 a month just for our portion, just for the revenue accelerator. But we know that this is a tough time for a lot of people, so we're trying to do everything we can for people.
Great. That's great. Thanks, Alan. I think we're just about out of time, so we want to wrap it up here. And I first just want to thank, of course, Alan and Mark and Z for carrying so much of the presentation. Just as final words, Alan, anything else that you want to talk to about before we sign off here?
No, I know everybody there is in some way, shape, or form hurting somehow. So it's our time to help each other. If there are any links or any resources that you know that are not in the guide, please let us know so we can share that and socialize with everybody else. And let's just all help each other during this time, right? It's a challenging time. We're not only business people, but a lot of us are parents and part-time teachers at home as well. So whatever we can do to help each other as far as resources, even in that guide, there's resources, a few in there for getting money for your kids at home. So thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, and watch for an email. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right.
Have a great day.
Have a blessed day. Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.